And welcome. Welcome to the No Name Yet podcast. That is the podcast with no name. And in tonight's episode, I will be doing this solo. So, welcome to the show. For those that have been so loyal and listening to the No Name Yet podcast, I thank you so much for your support. Season 2 has gotten off to a slow start. That we've only done 3 episodes. I've only done 3 episodes in season 2. And the last 2 to 3 weeks, there has been no episode. And I thought that I would fill everybody in what has been going on. That I do want to continue doing the No Name Yet podcast. And in this the last couple of weeks, I've produced, put together the tech, and participated in the Praise and Raise Telethon for St. James African Methodist Episcopal Church. That was the Praise and Raise Telethon, and at the church's goal was to raise $5,000, and we made it just this last week. So we thank everybody who supported St. James African Methodist Episcopal Church, and to God be the glory that we made our goal. And in saying that, I would like to get everybody excited. I would like to let everybody know that we will be doing a special behind the scenes episode of the Praise and Raise Telethon, featuring some of the clips that we put up during the telethon. We'll have some clips from the Bible Trivia for Heathens. We will have clips of a marathon, of a great race, perhaps some clips of the church chopped cooking competition. And Gritty will be on. Hopefully Mo will be on, and that you'll be able to see the work that we did in the church and the fun that we had doing it. So look for that episode very soon. Best case scenario, it will be up, and let me look at the date. I forgot the date. That it will be posted on March 25th. March 25th. So I participated, worked on the Praise and Raise Telethon, also put together the memorial service for the hospital that I work for. This memorial service memorialized those that died at the hospital during the last year. And that was of course, it was a lot of work, but the memorial service really went very, very well, and a lot of people were blessed, and it looked good. The tech went very well, and that is always a blessing. That's always a blessing. And this past Sunday at St. James AME Church, we hosted our first fellowship service online. Without going into a lot of the details, we were invited into the schedule of fellowship services with our sister churches in the Albany-Kingston district. And it was our first time hosting, and that went very well also. And I want to give a big shout out to the people of the congregation, and excuse me, and a big shout out to Gritty for helping with the technical end of things. And that went very well also. And people were blessed. And the woman who preached, the Reverend Shirley Whitlock, really, really preached. She shared her story, she shared her past, she shared what God brought her through, and people really walked away from that feeling blessed. So that's what I've been up to. Each one of those projects required many hours of working with video clips, working with the technology, working with OBS, and It just it got too much that we weren't able to sit down and make an episode of the No Name Yet podcast. Uh, but I am glad to be here and talking to you right now. Uh, it's interesting doing a podcast on your own and alone. And for those of you that know who Gritty is, that he suggested that it is good for the podcaster's soul to do a solo video once in a while. And there's one thing that I really would like to talk about tonight. And it's something that really is bothering me, is disrupting my spirit. And that is the level of censorship that we are experiencing, especially now that this war has begun in Ukraine. Within the past couple of weeks, two people that I regularly listen to have been suspended. They've been suspended for things like reporting on things that former President Trump said, and they played raw footage, and uh, he believes that the election was stolen. Of course, we know it wasn't. Now you're required by YouTube to immediately debunk the claim that the presidential election was rigged, which we know is not true. And so these news outlets, these independent news outlets, played raw footage, and there were some other kind of gotcha community standards to do with COVID, do with the election, and they got suspended. One of those shows was Rising on the Hill. Another show was the Kim Iverson show. And, the support that seems to be coming from the so-called left, supported in obviously by the Democratic Party. The Republicans are no better. We heard that they were burning books lately. This is serious stuff. This is serious stuff. This is worrying stuff. I woke up this morning and was listening to a clip here and a clip there, and to find out that the journalist Abby Martin, formerly of the Empire Files, Abby Martin, a journalist that has been working hard for many years, had 600 videos removed from YouTube. This is a woman that goes out there and tries to do some real investigative journalism. And they've now targeted her. And we just don't know who's going to be next, what else is going to get people censored from YouTube. Maybe some of you may be aware that former President Trump was on a podcast. I don't know the name of that podcast right now, but I believe that something like 5 million people watched the interview, and then it got taken down by YouTube. And I'll just be honest, I am no fan of former President Trump, but nor am I a fan of Joe Biden, nor am I a fan of any of the political parties. I don't know how you censor a sitting president. When they censored President Trump before, did I did I approve of what he was saying on social media? No. I just am a firm believer in the First Amendment and the right to free speech. And a lot of people use these arguments that outlets like YouTube are private companies, and that they can create any rules that they want. It's their platform, it's private. But at this point, I would think that there would be some constitutional lawyers out there. There would be some civil rights lawyers. There would be some activists that would be making the case that YouTube, Google, and other outlets, Facebook, have gotten to be so big that they have become a public square. I don't believe that that is out of the realm of uh, legal debate. And if somebody right now is saying, well, that's ridiculous, they're privately owned companies, if the Supreme Court can rule that corporations are people, I think that a good hard look needs to be taken at what can be construed as the public square. This argument has brought up in the past when it came to these mega malls that killed downtowns without success. And just because it hasn't worked in the past doesn't mean it can't work in the future. But these platforms now are crucial to a lot of people's business, a lot of people's livelihood. It is a way for us to communicate. It is a way to create a marketplace of ideas, even if you don't like those ideas, even if you think those ideas are misinformation. The fact that our government and other pundits and other influencers in our society have the platform to even utter to make the accusation of misinformation just reeks of authoritarianism. Misinformation, disinformation, it reeks of authoritarianism. And I never liked people who said that that America is turned into a nanny state. However, now I'm tending to kind of understand some of the arguments about the nanny state, or maybe say the big brother state at this point, that there's this big fight about misinformation. And what it says to me is that people with power, people with access to platforms, think that the American public is stupid and incapable of critical thinking. And even if there are segments of our society that are incapable of critical thinking, why should that affect me and what I have access to in these virtual spaces? I don't need the government. I don't need YouTube. I don't need Google. I don't need Twitter. I don't need Facebook to tell me what I can and can't read, or should read and should not read. Because when we take a look at the information that is being disseminated across mainstream platforms, that is disseminated by the government, that is disseminated by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, or whatever organizations or people that have power and do have access to broadcast a message that reaches a lot of people. When we look at those platforms, when we look at those outlets, and that we compare and we contrast with perhaps some independent journalists, perhaps with an opposing viewpoint on another mainstream media, that it is not difficult to see that somebody is creating propaganda. And from my perspective, unless you're going to one of these independent journalists that are putting their nose to the ground, actually going to different countries, going to places and writing these pieces and researching what they're reporting, that most of what we are consuming is propaganda. The Secretary of State of the federal government, of the Biden administration, made the comment on public TV that we have to stop worrying about the history that led up to the Russia-Ukraine war, and that we should not listen to people who oppose the war and give reasons for opposing this war. That we have to focus on the here and now. And the way I heard that is that there's nothing to see here, that the US government does not have a history in this conflict, uh, cannot be construed as instigating it since 2014, which seems to be the case, that you listen to what we have to tell you, that you focus on the here and now, and we'll tell you what to think. They want to control all the narratives, and they're taking down people at a high rate for offering alternative narratives, for offering nuance, for offering a different perspective on things. And when I was coming up, I was brought up to value the First Amendment, to value the freedom of the press, to value the freedom of speech, to value the freedom of assembly. And it's clear to me that our government does not respect those things and finds them very inconvenient for the authoritarian direction that they have brought this country. Now, this is an overview of my viewpoint. I mean, I could sit down and I could write things down and give you specific details. The thing about it is it's overwhelming. It's happening constantly. The outlets that I recommend to get some perspective are Rising on the Hill, Breaking Points, Jimmy Dore, The Gray Zone, Useful Idiots, The Katie Helper Show, all available on YouTube now. All available and accessible now, but who knows? They have offered alternative narratives. They've researched, they've reported on the history of the the Russia-Ukraine war. So who knows how long that they will be up. Now that COVID seems to have died down and we're not even talking about it anymore, what about all those people that were taken down from YouTube for supposedly reporting false information? I guess the point of this episode one is that even though I was, really busy, that perhaps I could have come out with another episode of the No Name Yet podcast in the midst of all that work. The wind has been taken out of my sails. The spiteful part of me is like, I don't want to produce any content that would go up on YouTube. Not that I'm making YouTube any money, and I know I'm not making myself any money. It's a very, very small show. But part of me is saying, don't even contribute to this beast, to this animal. But the thing about it is I enjoy this platform. I mean, I enjoy doing the podcast. I really think that we are headed in a very, very bad direction. And I would ask that, if you are a consumer of the news and you're watching one news source, that I ask you to diversify. And I ask you to diversify to the point that maybe you're looking at 3 to 4 mainstream sources, go into podcasts, and go into independent outlets with people who have sacrificed careers with MSNBC and the big news outlets, so they could have a show and report what they wanted to report. I mean, I hope that everybody is aware that MSNBC, CNN, Fox, forbids certain topics to even be discussed. You're not going to get a good debate on. You're not going to get a good debate on Medicare for all. You're not going to get a good debate on $15 minimum wage. You are not going to get an anti-war message. These outlets are sponsored by the military industrial complex, NBC, CBS, ABC, even PBS, uh, and definitely CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. It's really a sad day when you don't have the confidence that you can find genuine and authentic information, and that unfortunately the federal government of our country is becoming more authoritarian and is trying to control the kind of news and information that we consume, and they're doing it with the help of the big tech giants too. And unfortunately, folks, for those of you familiar with that famous book, 1984 by George Orwell, we're there. We're there. And will we get as dystopian as the book? I don't know, but we are there, and it's really unfortunate, and especially someone who grew up. I'm a generation X, that I just remember people being fervent defenders of free speech in the 80s. And you just don't see it. You see people that are encouraging censorship. I mean, if you consider yourself a liberal or progressive and you support censoring anyone, you're not a liberal or progressive. You're an authoritarian, just like the government is. And I don't even like those labels. At one point in my life, I was comfortable with liberal. Then I became comfortable with progressive, and there's been a lot of effort to tarnish, to degrade the moniker of progressive, and it's just too bad. So I choose not to label myself. Because as this keeps going, moving on, that people that would identify as conservatives and people who identify themselves as leftists are starting to agree on a lot more. So I'm sorry I didn't make you laugh tonight or this morning or this afternoon, whenever you're watching, but it's something that I really wanted to get out there and to say. I will be continuing the podcast. I will be doing it with a little less enthusiasm while I'm uploading it to YouTube, because YouTube can't be trusted. It's an authoritarian platform, and it's a tool of the state, and they've gotten too big and they control too much. And so if they take down my channel, it's not much skin on my teeth. This is my hobby. But my heart really goes out to those people that make a living off of YouTubing. And I think it's a real shame that an organization as powerful as Google and YouTube would be so draconian and so despotic as to take away people's livelihoods for saying things that aren't approved by the state. So we end our episode the same way every time, with a prayer. So let us pray. That, Lord, in these uncertain times, in these frightening times, that God, I make one simple request tonight. I have one simple prayer, that each and every one of us, whether we believe in Jesus Christ or we believe in another God, we have a different faith, or we have a different spiritual tradition, that we all acknowledge a power greater than that we acknowledge a power greater than ourselves, that we acknowledge a power greater than ourselves, which I will call God at this time, and that we do feel God's presence, and that we take the serenity prayer seriously, that God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So good night.